directive to fight on in Ukraine and to pick off former Soviet countries such as Moldova or the Baltic states. Without American pressure, Israel is unlikely to generate an internal consensus for peace talks with the Palestinians. Calculating that Mr. Trump does not stand by his allies, Japan and South Korea could acquire nuclear weapons. By asserting that America has no global responsibility to help deal with climate change, Mr. Trump would crush efforts to slow it. And he is surrounded by China hawks who believe confrontation is the only way to preserve American dominance. Caught between a deal-making president and his warmongering officials, China could easily miscalculate over Taiwan with catastrophic consequences. Talk to me about how much less safe America is with that vision of the new global order.
America is much less safe right now. I think that this has always been shaped in the context of a political story. What's going to happen if he wins? This is a national security story right now. He is a threat right now. He is threatening people in America. He is validating our enemies. And he is the leader of what I've called the American insurgency. It's a social movement that seeks to reverse the election, overthrow the government, and install him as the leader. That is happening right now. Every day he's out in the streets. He's posting social media. He is disrupting our civilization. He is an immediate national security threat that the national security apparatus is thinking about. I think we look at this, what happens if he wins? What happens if he's out and doing this for the next 11 months? I think that is the more immediate threat. We've got to move that bar closer back because he's got, at the end of the day, millions of people who are angry with guns who will do what he says. And I think we have to approach it in that kind of framework first and most of all.
And I think also if he does win, and you think about what that means for sort of the geopolitical order, Amy referenced the Greatest Generation, right? And in the Greatest Generation, America was part of the Allied powers that were for liberal democracy and freedom against the Axis powers that were for authoritarianism and dictatorship. There is a rising axis of authoritarians out there in the world right now. It includes Russia. It includes China. It includes countries like Turkey and Hungary who are trading ideas and working together. Whether there is a Cold War or, God forbid, a hot war, the notion that America in the 21st century would be on the side of the Axis powers is a terrifying thought. We don't make America great again by putting us on the Axis side and not the Allied side.
Let me ask you, though, as someone who focuses a lot on elections, if every U.S. election moving forward becomes this plea to voters, democracy is on the line, one, what does that do to the very nature of our elections? And two, can you ever advance as a country and as a society if democracy itself always remains in peril?
You can't. You can't have a sustainable democracy where one of the two parties has been captured by an extremist authoritarian movement and is consistently representing the potential end of free democracy. But I don't think that's where we necessarily need to be. We have a significant anti-MAGA, anti-authoritarian majority in this country. The challenge we have is some of our electoral system design choices actually make it so that a plurality, not a majority, could
end gerrymandering
the electoral college. And if you go back and look at the early 20th century, after the Great Depression, a loss of faith in institutions, you see a fracturing of parties around the world in the United States, in Europe, a lot like we're seeing today, where we're seeing a fracturing of parties, third-party candidates rising. And the danger is, when it fractures like that, a plurality faction can sneak through, and people who do not represent a majority of views can take power. It's why some of these third-party candidates represent one of the greatest threats right now, because they could create a situation in which a very unpopular authoritarian leader could sneak through and take power again.
And breaking in just the last hour, Speaker Mike Johnson announcing that security footage of the January 6th attack will be made available to the public. That includes footage that was given to then Fox News host Tucker Carlson by Speaker Kevin McCarthy earlier this year. You poured through this footage. You took steps to make sure that the footage didn't disclose sensitive security information. Your reaction to Speaker Johnson's move today?
Yeah, it's dangerous. You know, the Capitol Police gave it to us, Alicia, with really strict conditions that we needed to clear with them before we publicly showed any of that footage. You know, it's relevant because it demonstrates some events in and around the Capitol. There are security cameras posted all over the complex, but the specific location of those cameras is closely held law enforcement sensitive information. And if they're all disclosed and a map can essentially be recreated as to where they are, that will make it easier for future rioters who are intent on disrupting another joint session of Congress or official proceeding to circumvent those cameras. So it's really risky to just throw the doors open and make them together without any protection.
There's also the fact that just this week you had a Republican congressman peddling conspiracy theories about what actually happened on January 6th, trying to argue that the FBI was involved in January 6th. You take this footage and you put it in the hands of bad actors. Who knows where it goes?
Well, and I think it's a bit weird that Mike Johnson is doing this. He's recently become the Speaker of the House, right? He was a sort of consensus candidate when they kind of panicked after 3 weeks of Republicans not having a Speaker. And also, he recently endorsed Donald Trump. So you have to wonder, is he doing this as like a campaign stunt, or is he doing this in his job as Speaker of the House?
Break it down a little bit more for our viewers so they have a better understanding, because I, too, am saying this is a head-scratcher.
It really is, Katie, and you were talking before about Congress and the budgetary crisis with Congress kicking the can down the road. This is an example of a judge kicking the can up the road. She's made this baseline finding that Trump participated in insurrection, but to be removed from the ballot under Section 3 of the 14th Amendment, you have to have taken an oath as an officer of the United States. And she curiously found that the president is not an officer of the United States. There's some technical legal jargoning going on here. Now this will go to the Colorado Supreme Court for a decision as to whether they'll reverse and find that Trump...
This is the primal scream of a dying regime. Pray for our enemies, because we're going medieval on these people. You're just not got a free shot on all these networks lying about the people. The people have had a belly full of it. I know you don't like hearing that. I know you try to do everything in the world to stop that, but you're not going to stop it. It's going to happen.
And where do people like that go to share the big lie? MAGA media. I wish, in my soul, I wish that any of these people had a conscience.
Ask yourself, what is my task and what is my purpose? If that answer is to save my country, this country will be saved.
War Room. Here's your host, Stephen K. Bannon.